So, hello. Welcome to Connected Inc. 2022. So, my name is Peter Sommer. I'm Managing Director of Wacom Europe, and I'm super proud to open the European part of Connected Inc. today, being here in Düsseldorf in the Wacom Experience Center, but also having many people online watching us today. I'm here today with Heidi Wang and Stefan Kiemde in the introduction session, and we will introduce them later as well. First, before I hand over to you, I want to give you a little bit an idea of what Connected Inc. is. Huh? Yeah. Oh, that was too... Yeah. So Connected Inc. is an event. It's an annual event. We do this since years, every year. It's a local event, so we are here in Germany, in Düsseldorf, but we are also streaming to the world. But it's also a community. It's a community of you here in the room. It's a community of people online. And it's also a community of interesting partners we have, but also lots of interesting speakers and sessions. We initiated Connected Inc. to create a space for continuous exploration about the future of human creativity. So we called it the Creative Chaos. We still call it like this. And what we do here, we raise questions, we ask questions, we exchange ideas amongst participants and speakers, and we discuss a lot. We try to inspire ourselves on different topics. And we have people from all parts of the world and all walks of life here who then share their discoveries, share their experiences, perspectives in almost 2 weeks. So we have a 2 weeks event here, or 2 weeks community taking place online and here. And normally the topics we discuss, or everything we discuss, is focused on arts, education, technology, but also on science. So that's kind of the concept of Connected Inc. Maybe you cannot yet imagine what it is, but you will see in the coming days. And we also have an agenda later, which we can explain. No, this is not good. So it's taking 2 weeks now. We're starting today. Globally, we have Connected Inc. on 3 different continents. And we have Connected Inc. in 5 different cities. So we have it in Tokyo, in Portland, in Seoul, in Shanghai, and here in Düsseldorf. So these are 105 inspiring speakers whom we brought together, sharing their insights and ideas with you, but also discuss with you. And we have 65 sessions in total, globally, in those 5 cities. And 20 of those sessions will happen here in Düsseldorf. So Düsseldorf and Europe is a big portion. And we are so proud to have 4 days prepared for you. And the 4 days are having, each day will have a specific motto, which I will briefly explain, and also give you some insights of the sessions or some parts of the sessions in those days. So today we'll have the Humanity Day. We have 2 sessions only today, so we start with 2 sessions today. One session is about unlocking your creativity with neuroscience, that will follow right after the introduction here. And then we have a session about how you can foster mental health via or with illustration. So connection between illustrating and art, but also mental health. It's also a very interesting session. Then we have tomorrow the Technology Day, with I think 5 sessions in total, online and offline. One interesting session, I'll just highlight 2 maybe, is about how technology can help you to secure digital rights. That's the Digital Rights, Creative Rights Initiative, which we kicked off, and where we are discussing then the technology behind this and what can technology do here. We also have a session amongst these 5 about the understanding the meaning of ink. So that's also an interesting session tomorrow. Then we have on Saturday this week, we have the Education Day. It's a full day with education sessions. I think that's the longest day with 6 sessions, when I remember right. Topics, for instance, are how does the digital transformation in education affect the educational justice? So is it positive or negative? You will learn. Another one is about the future of school and technology in school. So there's some sessions here. I think very interesting, full day. And then we have the creativity day, which is also interesting. That's then a week later, next Saturday. And I think there's also one session in between the education and the creativity day, which is about storytelling and how color and light can impact storytelling. Or we looked into the automotive concept design, how nature is influencing or impacting the automotive concept design. There's far more, so I cannot introduce you to all the 20 sessions here. We have a website. If you search for Connected Inc. Düsseldorf, you will find all the agenda and also a deep introduction into the sessions. That's actually my part. We are here in the Experience Center. We are now streaming live from the Experience Center, and half of the sessions are really live and we stream them. Some other sessions are online. And when I'm talking here about the Experience Center in Düsseldorf, I think you saw everything when you came in here. You're sitting in our cinema here. I think that's the right moment to hand over to Stefan. Stefan Kirmse is our Senior Vice President for Corporate Brand and Communication. And he's also the brain behind our Experience Centers, not only here in Düsseldorf, also in the other cities. And with that, Stefan, I hand over to you.
Thanks, Peter. To move between these two lines. Strict order. Yeah, hello, welcome. Actually, myself and my team is the brain behind this center, so there are many more people. So Silke is sitting here. There's Alex in the background. There's Megan in Portland. And we have very young people sitting there in the corner supporting us, and they're all bringing their brains to the center. Actually, we started the center 6 years ago in Portland. And this is a picture, what you see here is a picture from our Experience Center. At that time, it was called Brand Experience Center in Portland. Little bit smaller, not such a nice cinema like we have here. But the exact same idea 6 years before Corona, and it's now in full-fledged working. It's always full. We have so many events there, fully booked. We're supporting the local community in Portland. The place is located very similar to Düsseldorf here in a kind of media harbor. And as you see on the picture, it's really full. So what is this Experience Center about? First of all, you may think a technology leadership company, as Wacom is, it's about our products. And yes, you can experience all our products and also the latest just launched Cintiq in the Experience Center. So whenever you have time, you want to experience the product, you want to find out how it feels, how it's working, you want to ask experts, you want to have an introduction of what is digital ink. You can come here. We have a full product table, as you can see in the middle, and you can experience the products anytime in the opening hours. But more, you can also join our sessions about how to draw a manga. You can have sessions like a designer from Mercedes-Benz showing his latest work in design and how it works and how he's using our products. So that's really bringing technology leadership to life and lets it feel in touch. But that's not it. Even more important than this one is what we as a company have as a mission, what we're bringing back to our customers and to society. And on the next picture here you see, sorry, that was too far, what else we do. And actually that's why an Experience Center is such a perfect platform for Connected Inc. Because in an Experience Center we're asking questions. For example, about the workplace in the future. We're asking questions about how can digital ink help our society to move forward? Is it more than just transferring analog into digital? And what is more than that? We have supporting Ukraine kids learning and having nice experiences and having their community part in this center. So there's also a big social part and social engagement. We're supporting the digital community here, especially the startup scenery in Düsseldorf and in Portland, with lots of events in the Experience Center. This is a way how we as a company really want to give back to the society, to our customers, to our stakeholders, what we have earned from selling our products to our customers. And therefore, one important question we're going to raise during this time of Connected Ink is, are we human beings making really progress? And when you really think about us today, look in the news this morning, look in the news about Russia. Are we making progress as a society? Are we making progress with digital? It's a perfect question to ask in an experience center and to have debates. And I hope that you all can engage with the following two speakers and the next events we have, because everything we do here is for dialogue, is for exchange. It's not for us to present our view. Our view actually doesn't matter, but it's for you as a community to connect with us and to exchange with your peers and your community in the local place as well as on a global place. And with this, I hand over to Heidi. Heidi is actually my favorite colleague because she really brought Connected Ink to a next level, and she also brings ink to a next level, and she will help you to understand a little bit more about what digital ink is and our ink philosophy.
I don't need. Okay, hello everyone from my side. Welcome to Connected Ink from my side as well. Thank you for the nice intro, Stefan. My name is Heidi Wang. I am in charge of Wacom. I make the short way, so for digital ink. Mainly responsible for creating new use cases for ink, and also building and developing technologies to make these use cases happen. And as Stefan shared, so I'm a part of the initiator of Connected Ink. And just to also connect what Peter shared already, Connected Ink is creative chaos. And the first one was actually 2016. And at that time, people already wonder what's about. So at the end, it's an open stage. It's an open stage where we invite all kinds of partners, artists, creative minds, people from research or science, as Peter has already shared, to come here to share their perspective, to share their projects, and to share also what they are building and what they are creating and how their vision about their philosophy is about. And as a catalyst for this open stage, every year we pick open questions. And this year we decided for the two questions, and one is, have humans really evolved since their origin? And as Stefan, I think you mentioned, so we are now in a world, I think in a society, full of unexpected changes, happenings, that really put many of our life aspects upside down. So what we want to provide here on this open space is give this open question and allow everyone to share your own perspective, because we believe there is no black and white answer to these open questions. And what we want to really facilitate is the discussion, is exploration, joint exploration, learning from each other, being inspired from each other. Maybe there will be also new questions coming up. So that's is our first question. Have humans really evolved since origin? Also encouraging our reflection, what our humankind is there for 200,000 years more than. So has anything changed, or what are the opportunities? and where should we involve also as a society? The next question is connecting to our heritage as a company. So we as Wacom, for almost 40 years, actually to next calendar year 2023, we are going to celebrate our 40th anniversary. And since then, since the founding days, we have always devoting ourselves to build technology and tools to contribute to human creativity. And since then, actually, the use case has broadened a lot, from illustration to drawing to design, but also in business use cases, and more we see this also being really valuable in education space for helping people to learn and to grow their skills. So with this second open question, we want to also pause for a moment and say, okay, let's reflect together, being also very grateful for all our customers and partners joining us on this 40 years journey already. And let's discuss, where are we now? And is there also opportunities or needs to further involve together? So that's what inspires us and motivates us to bring up this second open question. So today is the first day of the Connected Inc. series in Europe. And I'm super excited to also see all the sessions that will follow, and also what will happening on global scale. But before opening the today's session here in Düsseldorf about Humanity Day, let me also share that Connected Inc. is not possible without our partners. And here you see a couple of them also from the local community that really help us to set up this open stage and this event this week and next week. So one is DigiTab. The second one is, I will go to the last one actually on the slide, Vivid. Vivid is also a local partner here. And also you see a couple of names that are very familiar from the stationery world. So the pen makers, very with a long heritage, which is Lamy, Montblanc, Staedtler. And the last one I want to mention is a partner called DSC, Digital Stationery Consortium. That's a consortium, an industry forum where we engage together with many companies and also science, research, as well as thought leaders to discuss, okay, the meaning of digital technology that will evolve the whole stationery market, but also the meaning of stationery for human being. So that's the Digital Stationery Consortium, and Wacom is also part of it. But here they also show it together. We will show also what we deliver as a consortium platform together. So with this, again, I'm super excited what's coming up next. I would like to hand over to Silke to share what's happening today. Thank you, Silke.
Thank you very much, Heidi. To get rid of all this technical stuff here. Hi, nice to see you. And yeah, again, very warm welcome here from the Wacom Experience Center in Düsseldorf. And thanks to you for this inspiring introduction for our journey the next days here in Connected Inc. My name is Silke Roggermann. I'm here the manager of the Wacom Experience Center in Düsseldorf. And I also want to say hi to our audience online. Maybe the regie can switch to the cinema view, if this is possible, and we all wave to the internet. Hello, internet! Thank you. We're really excited. I think the world is watching us. No, yeah. Call me the tour guide for the next days in Connected Inc. I try to connect the dots in the creative chaos, the different sessions, the different speakers, keynotes, panel talks, and so on, as Heidi already or Peter introduced. And yeah, so I'm really excited. It's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of brain work. Talking about the brain and the creative chaos. Our first guest for our first session, hopefully she will have some neuro hacks for us because she's a neuroscientist and she can help us with the creative chaos in our brains. I would like to introduce you to Friederike Fabritius. And she's such a exciting person with a million talents, so I have to read a little bit about her. person. So, Friederike Fabritius, Wall Street Journal best-selling author, neuroscientist, keynote speaker. Friederike Fabritius is a neuroscientist and trailblazer in the field of neuroleadership. Her brain-based leadership programs have transformed how Fortune 500 executives think, innovate, and navigate change. Fabritius is a thought leader and keynote speaker, known for engaging global audiences across the globe. An alumna of McKinsey & Company and the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research, she serves on the prestigious German Academy of Science and Engineering. Fabritius is the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the book The Brain-Friendly Workspace, Why Talented People Quit and How to Get Them to Stay, and The Leading Brain: Neuroscience Hacks to Work Smarter, Better, Happier. She's fluent in 6 languages and has worked with clients in over 164 countries. Find out more at friederikefabritius.com. Wow, that's impressive. And so I'm getting much more excited for a session, and I think I pass the stage on to Friederike. She's already joining us online, and I wish you a lot of fun and inspiration. Thank you very much. Maybe you can put me live, because I hadn't the time in my eyes. We have a few minutes before the session starts, so 10, it's 10 minutes? Okay, then you can use this for a bio break or get a drink. Also at home, get cozy on the couch or sofa. And yeah, at 6 p.m. we will return. Thank you.
Okay, another last minute change. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm here. So
Hi, and welcome back in the Wacom Experience Center in Düsseldorf. Yeah, now time for our first session of Connected Inc. And I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, Friederike Fabritius. And for the viewers who watched before, I have to just repeat the very great introduction of Friederike. Hope this is okay for you. Ah, there she is, live from Heidelberg. Hi, Friederike.
Hi. Hi.
I read this, if that's okay for you. Friederike Fabritius. She's a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, neuroscientist, keynote speaker. Friederike Fabritius is a neuroscientist and trailblazer in the field of neuroleadership. Her brain-based leadership programs have transformed how Fortune 500 executives think, innovate, and navigate change. Fabritius is a thought leader and keynote speaker, known for engaging global audiences across the globe. An alumna of McKinsey & Company and the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research, she serves on the prestigious German Academy of Science and Engineering. Fabritius is the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of The Brain-Friendly Workplace, Why Talented People Quit and How to Get Them to Stay, and the leading brain, Neuroscience Hacks to Work Smarter, Better, Happier. She's fluent in 6 languages and has worked with clients in over 164 countries. Find out more at friederikefabritius.com. So, Friederike, we can see and hear you. Nice to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. So I know we have a lot of creative people in the audience. So today I'd like to focus on how you can unlock your creative potential of your brain. And, you know, I want to test if there's really so many creative people. So I have prepared a little puzzle for you. Let's put it up like this. If you could maybe make a little drawing of these 9 dots somehow, or just imagine doing it if you don't have anything handy. And then the next step would be to try connecting all 9 of these dots with just 4 straight lines without lifting your finger or retracing a line. So connect all of the 9 dots with 4 straight lines without lifting your finger or retracing a line. I give you a second to solve this. Or to not solve it, just a creative moment. If you don't have anything to write or to draw on, then maybe you can just imagine you doing it. Because we know in the brain that what you imagine and what you do is simply almost the same thing for your brain. So just try it. Okay. If you don't solve it today, you can solve it later. The thing is, under normal conditions, 0% of people solve this task in the laboratory. So when they bring people to the laboratory to this kind of experiment, which tests your creative thinking, on average, 0% of the people in the laboratory manage to solve this puzzle. But when you apply transcranial stimulation to the right hemisphere of the brain, that rate goes up to 40%. So you can go from 0 to 40 just by stimulating the brain. Of course, I could stop my keynote here and now and just ask you all to get some little device that stimulates your brain to make your life much easier. But luckily, there are natural ways to stimulate your brain. And I believe much more in natural ways, because all of the things that like medications you can take or stimulation of your brain, they all come with side effects. So I don't think we want to necessarily go down that road. So today I'd like to show you some techniques on how you can set up your brain for creativity. And by the way, I don't want to ruin it for you, but the key here is to actually go outside the picture to connect all of those dots. So it is possible if you make it a bit bigger rather than staying within the box. So how can we set up the brain for creativity? And what happens in your brain when you're creative? Actually, a moment of insight in the brain can be seen in the brain scanner, and it can be seen within EEG. What happens there is that first you have alpha waves in the right hemisphere of your brain. So there's a certain activity of a certain waveform of activity in your brain. And then after that, you get gamma oscillations. So what you see here on that graph, you first see the alpha inside effect, that's the black line. And then you see the gamma inside effect, that's the gray line. I can make it a bit bigger for you here. And the interesting thing is that the gamma inside effect in the brain is known as something that happens when we have aha moments. So these gamma oscillations are rare in the brain, and they happen when we have like an aha moment, something that can't be solved just with logic. And I'd like to give you just a simple framework today that you can use with some simple brain hacks to set up your brain for creativity strategically, so that's available to you whenever you need it and whenever you want it. So let's dive right into it. So in the brain, basically, there are, I would say, there's a certain relationship between performance and stress. And what happens when you're really, really bored? I'm sure you've all been there, you know, some boring meeting. You just sit there, and of course, your brain does not go into peak performance, right? You just wish for the time to be over. It's so boring. And what happens when you're truly stressed out? Your brain also doesn't go into peak performance. And so it's down here as well. Here's where you want to be. You want to be up here. And that's when you reach peak performance. And that's when we get into flow. And that's when we get that creative experience where we can be up to 5 times more creative, where we can learn 5 times faster, where you can do in one day what other people do in 5 days. And this is called the flow state. And there are 3 ingredients to it. And I call them, let me get this right. I call them fun, fear, and focus. Because fun is associated with the dopamine system in your brain. So when you have fun, your brain releases dopamine that helps your brain to think faster. When you have just the right level of fear, not too little and not too much, that's when your brain releases acetylcholine. And that gives you a little energy burst, a little energy kick. And when you're fully focused, your brain releases acetylcholine. And that is like a magical chemical that helps you to stay locked into that experience rather than multitasking or doing something else. And when all 3 come together, you can be so much more creative. So let's dive right into it. And let's start with fun. Research shows that not many people have fun at work. And very often people also think you shouldn't have fun at work because you're paid to do it, right? It should be a dreadful experience. But I think for most creatives, work is more than just a job that pays your bill, because in some cases, probably it doesn't even pay your bills. Let's be honest. So it's more of a passion. It's a calling. It's an obsession. It's something you just have to do. It's your purpose. And it sure releases a lot of dopamine in your brain. So the chemical associated with fun is dopamine. So we're going to talk about ways in which you can release dopamine so that it stimulates your creative brain. So how can we do that? Let me start with a simple study. What they did is they put people, I'm going to make this bigger for you so you can see it. So they put people into the brain scanner and they gave them insight problems to solve. So these are creative problems, and then they measured how many problems people were solving. And they could find that when people were in a positive mood, they solved more problems. And when people were anxious, they solved less problems. So what this means is that when you are able to put yourself into a positive mood, when you activate positive emotions, when you laugh together, when you have a bit of humor, when you look at things positively, it will help your creativity. And this can be measured both in terms of brain activity, but also in terms of results. So if you ever feel pressured by a deadline to deliver to a client, one sure way to ease this up is by maybe watching a funny movie, doing something that you truly enjoy, eating some chocolate. Chocolate will double your dopamine baseline, by the way. And so I'm not here to push sugar on you people. It's more the serotonin also in the chocolate that has a very positive impact. And dark chocolate is better than the milk variation, but still what I'm saying is when you have fun at work, it raises your dopamine levels and it also enhances your ability to be creative and solve creative problems. So what else can you do? Actually, I'll give you one simple example. When I worked in consulting, they loved to evaluate me. They were on me all the time. Trust me, they were like watching what I was doing. And they always had little charts like this, and they would say like, oh, great, the clients love you. You know, they always like want you on the team. And oh, you speak all these languages. That's really cool. But hey, what's going on over here? What is this? Are these your Excel skills? Are they really so terrible? And then how did I spend the remaining 2 years at that company? Excel for the beginners, Excel for the advanced, and Excel for the hopeless. I was stuck. I spent day and night in a dark basement, crunching numbers, eating pizza, if they gave me something to eat, while my colleagues were out and about, entertaining the client, traveling to different countries. I was stuck working on my Excel skills. Was this the best use of my time? Certainly not. Not for me, not for the people who employed me. And what we can learn from this is, of course, you shouldn't ignore people's weaknesses. If you have a weakness, I mean, don't let me near an Excel sheet, okay? Don't give it to me. Close the program down. Don't allow me to mess with your company sales data. What you should do instead is hire somebody who's great at what you're bad at. So you need somebody else on the team who excels in the very skills that you underperform in, to put it mildly. So we shouldn't ignore weaknesses, but we shouldn't train people along their weaknesses. We should train people along their strengths. We should allow people to work in line with their strength and what I call their neurosignatures. We're going to get to the neurosignature concept in a second. So it's very important to understand that when you work in line with your passions, your talent, and something you care about, you're going to be so much more productive. And in fact, a study has shown that when people or when companies have people with spiky profiles who have some strength but also some weaknesses, they perform better than those companies that try to make everybody mediocre on everything. Of course, they don't want mediocre people, but that's what's happened when you just spend all your time working on weaknesses. So one sure way to increase your creative potential is to work in line with your talents, to ask yourself what I'm really good at, and then to find someone else who can do the task that you despise. Research has also shown that when we travel to new countries, when we meet with eccentric people, when we explore new views, when we eat some spicy food, when we try something new, that's when the brain releases a lot of dopamine. So a lot of things happen in our brain when we expose ourselves to new experiences. Our brains crave novelty. So that's really important, especially for a creative person. Many are still working from home, and I think that's great. Hybrid workplaces or, technology can solve a lot of things, but you should still try to get out and make new experiences, stimulate all the senses, because if there's the same experience every day, you're likely to be less creative than when you expose yourself to a wide range of stimulation, to put it that way. So we talked about 3 different things. One is when you're in a good mood, dopamine is released. So that's a simple way to improve your creativity. The second thing we talked about is that it's good to work in line with your talents. And the third thing is to seek novelty, try something new, explore, experiment. That will set up your brain for creativity. So as far as fun is concerned and dopamine stimulation, those are the 3 things I like to mention today. And maybe one more thing, because it's just so cool. Did you know that there's a simple activity that can boost your creativity by 60%? Think about it. Imagine if there was some kind of super drug where they told you, take this and your creativity will be boosted by 60%. I'm sure this company would be very profitable. You know what boosted creativity by 60% according to Stanford University? Taking a walk. Yes, movement is the best thing you can do for your brain. So if you move, if you take a walk or go to the gym or do something like that, you will get more oxygen to your brain. You will get better blood flow to your brain. You will get more dopamine. You will get something that's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDFG, which actually helps us to learn better, to grow new neurons, to make new experiences. So it's really crucial that you move. If you sit all day, it's not going to be good for your brain, okay? So we certainly want to make sure that we get that humor in the workplace and the mood booster. We want to work in line with our talents. We want to make sure we expose ourselves to new novel experiences, and we want to make sure that we move. So I could go on talking about fun for hours, but I also want to talk about fear and focus. So now let's talk about fear. Fear doesn't sound like something you want at work, does it? Or anywhere in life. But actually, it's necessary to a certain degree. So as I showed you before, our best performance is reached when here is performance, and here we have stress. The best one is reached when we are just slightly over a challenge. So when the challenge is a little bit too big for you, that's when the brain releases noradrenaline. And noradrenaline is like a wake-up call for your brain. It's like a cold shower. It's a really novel experience. And so the big interesting thing is we all need to be slightly over challenged, because that one will release noradrenaline in the brain, and noradrenaline gives us that little kick. But some people are over here. They love stress. They love new challenges. They're constantly traveling across the globe, trying out new things, and they can stomach more stress than the rest of us. They're always exploring, always learning, adventurous, jetting around the globe maybe, or being very creative. And that's great. But we also have people over here to the left. And now I may ask you, where can we find those, and which professions? Are these the low performers? Are these the boring people with boring lives who never try anything new? I can tell you that here we have Pulitzer Prize-winning scientists who focus on one topic for 20 years and find the cure for cancer. Here we have Pulitzer Prize-winning authors who actually sit down and focus on the book for years until it's perfect. So there are different types of creativity. There's not just one type of creativity. I would even say there are different creativity styles. And the only difference is what you need to reach it. We all have different neurosignatures, and neurosignatures shape your personality. So they are, how do I put this? They are triggered by certain chemicals in your brain. And maybe I can give you a very short overview of this. So basically, whether you're to the left or to the right of that curve, whether you're a sensation seeker or deep thinker, is influenced by dopamine. So how active is your dopamine system in the brain? It pushes you to the right. Testosterone. Yes, women have it too. So this is not just for men. How active your testosterone system is will determine how much stress you need in order to reach your best performance. And then we have serotonin. Some people have a more active serotonin system. That's a more calmer quality, but where you focus more on the details and where there's more of a calm happiness, a way of being content, less ups and downs, and more of a well-being component. And then we have estrogen. Estrogen is also very important because people with very active estrogen systems in their brain tend to have more connected brains. And when you have more connected brains, you have more lateral thinking. So I'm saying rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, we actually have 4 different types of creativity. And you need to understand what you need to be creative. We all have different individual stress points. Some people need more stress, some people need less. You maybe need a crowded cafe where you get your best ideas, and somebody else needs complete silence. And so find what works for you and work with your neurosignature and not against it. This might sound a bit like from a self-help book and very trivial, but when you look at what people actually do, they always try to change themselves. They always say, I wish I was like my colleague. I wish I was like my mother. I wish. People have expectations on you. And rather than trying to adapt to those expectations, you should do you. I should do what I can do best under the conditions that are perfect for me. And somebody else might need something completely different. So that's why neurosignatures are so important. And that's why I think we should add the idea of neurosignature diversity to the diversity agenda. Of course, there are many important aspects such as gender, sexual orientation, race. All of that is important, of course. But we tend to not think about enough that different brains need different things. And so there's not just one workplace that works for people. We need different ways of working for different types of brains and neurosignatures. So find what you love, find out where you are at that curve, and then create your perfect workplace rather than trying to fit yourself into the workplace. When it comes to fear, it's important to also understand that when there's too much fear, it actually shrinks your brain. What you can see here are brains of people who've been exposed to long-term chronic stress, and it makes your brain shrink, especially true for women, by the way. So in order to take care of your brain, make sure that stress is never long-term, that you keep control over it, and that you interrupt the stress cycle. So a little bit of fear is good. A little bit of fear pushes you to be more innovative and to come up with new ideas. But when you can't sleep at night anymore, when you're constantly worrying, when you constantly feel stressed out, that's when your brain will actually shrink and be damaged. So it's important to take good care of your brain and to make sure you get enough sleep to interrupt that stress cycle. And I maybe give you one example of a technique that works to do that we can all do together right away at this moment. And here's how it goes. There's a technique that's called emotional labeling. And what you do is you simply put your feelings into words. So you can all take a moment right now and think about how you feel at this moment. Do you feel tired, excited, bored, happy, interested? Just find a word, try to define it. That's it. That's the exercise. You can tell someone, you can write it down, but you can also just label it in your brain. And what will happen is that the amygdala activity in your brain will go down. Well, that's pretty amazing. And the prefrontal cortex activity in your brain will go up. What does this tell you? This tells you that actually the parts of your brain that are trying to be rational, like your prefrontal cortex, are becoming more active again. And the emotional parts of your brain with the negative emotions are becoming less active. And that's a simple way in which you can interrupt the stress cycle. So if you're sitting in a meeting and somebody makes you angry, stop, take a breath, observe, label your emotions, and proceed. You can do that in 30 seconds. You can do it anytime, and nobody doesn't even notice. So research has shown that this is a very effective way to combat stress and to reduce cortisol levels. And it can be done anytime, anywhere. And that's also why it's so good for people to go into therapy or to write letters or to write a diary. Because when we put our feelings into words, the bad ones go away. So we usually think that when we focus on our negative emotions, it actually makes them grow and explode. When in reality, when we focus on our negative emotions, they go away more quickly. Of course, if you're in a leadership position, this also means that you should give your employees some time to also raise some negative feelings with you, because the moment they get to tell you how angry they are, they're already becoming less angry. This can come in handy sometimes. So we talked about fear. I talked about two things: neurosignatures, and to work in line with your neurosignature rather than trying to fit in. And the other thing is, reducing stress levels and trying emotional labeling. So these are just two simple ways on how to think about your fear level. And of course, you want to be slightly over-challenged, not hugely overwhelmed. You don't want to be bored, and you don't want to be stressed out. You want to be just there in the middle, at the sweet spot. And that is different for everyone else because everyone has different optimal stress points. Let's talk about focus. When you're fully focused, your brain releases acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is like a brain booster. It gives you that silence in your head where you're fully focused. It's like a spotlight. It's like a laser light focus. And of course, in today's world where people multitask, when you multitask, you make 50% more mistakes. You need to take 50% longer to complete the task. People are constantly distracted. Technology is great for us, but not when you're sitting at dinner table and scrolling while your kids talk to you or try to talk to you. So it's good to have technology in our lives. I think it's hugely helpful, but we also need to learn to take some breaks, protect our brains, because it's hugely addictive. In some simple way, when we talk about creativity, there's actually something that's very important, and that's silence and solitude. Many people work in open space offices, and that's very collaborative. At least that's the intention behind it, and it saves a lot of cost, but people never get a quiet moment. And actually, when we look at that original picture we had of the aha insight, what actually happens here is that your brain's attention turns inward. You get that alpha effect when you turn your focus inwards, and then the gamma oscillations start with the aha insight effect. So first of all, in order to have one of these aha moments, a true creative breakthrough, you need to give your brain some silence and solitude. And I'd like to show you a simple proof of that. We can see it here. And actually what you can see here is the impact of brainstorming in a group versus alone. So here we have inside problems. Inside problems are creative problems. So on this side of the graph, we have a creative challenge. And on this side of the graph, we have just a logical puzzle, like some math examples or something. And what you can see here is that verbal is the dark blue. So when people talk and brainstorm together, the creativity in the group was reduced. But when people were silent, creativity was much higher. And the impact is not there as much for normal problem solving or rational problem solving. So whenever creativity is involved, when people brainstorm together and shout ideas at each other, actually they generate less ideas. I don't know, I think people are so used to brainstorming together, to have these group sessions, and of course they're great, but my recommendation would be to first do some solo brainstorming first. Get into the groove, collect your own ideas, and then maybe have a collaborative, collective brainstorming session. I mean, there is a joy in coming together and being collaborative and creative together, but you get better results if you first get people's individual input first. So that's very important to understand that when you want your brain to focus, we need to give more room to silence and solitude. And with that, I'd like to give you one final hack on how you can find your flow immediately. And it goes like this. Fun plus fear leads to focus. So when you find the right level of fun and you get those dopamine levels, and when you get just the right level of fear, not too much, not too little, find your optimal stress point in line with your neurosignature, that's when your brain releases noradrenaline, positive stress hormone. And when those two come together, focus happens automatically. And then we have the acetylcholine. So when you find yourself having trouble getting into flow, control the amount of fun you're having, try to make this situation more enjoyable, try to either reduce stress level or increase the challenge, and boom, you'll be focused. So find the right level of fun, find the right level of fear, and focus will follow naturally. Thank you so much. I'll go back. I think we have a Q&A session, and I love getting questions. So I'm waiting on those, and I hope you can use the chat to put in your questions, and I can't wait to see them.
Friederike, thank you very, very much. I have the feeling you spoke about me during Connected Inc. This is fun and fear, does everything works out, and then just focus. Just do it. Thank you. It's really cool. So, are there any questions from the audience? Oh, Rafik, first one. I take this.
Hello, thank you so much for taking the time. I do have one question in particular. You mentioned that people who are more anxious are able to solve less problems. But what about the people who operate on anxiety? Like, for example, me personally, I operate on deadlines or like solving problems when I'm mostly or anxious the most rather than very calm, very relaxed. So in that case, is this something that is considered normal/healthy, or is it like an anomaly, for example? Thank you.
That's normal and healthy. So it's good that you asked that question so that I'm not confusing people. So yes, you want to have a little bit of anxiety. That's the fear factor. You want to be slightly over challenged. You want to have that thing of, will I make it? Will I be able to pull it off? You know, that's good. And everyone has that. What is bad is when you're constantly worried, you can't sleep at night anymore, you're chronically stressed, and your life has basically turned into a nightmare. So for some people, they have such high stress levels, and then the amygdala grows in your brain, and you become more and more negative, and serotonin levels drop, and you go into allostatic overload, and you get those chronically high cortisol levels. So I'm not talking about chronic stress and anxiety. I'm more talking about short-term challenge. That's good for you. And that's normal and that's expected. What we don't want to see is where your entire life, maybe I can even show it to you here. So basically, you don't want to spend all your life over here where you're over challenged. You don't want to be all the time in that mode where you always feel like you're not enough, you can't do it, it's too much. You want to be here in that happy zone up here where you're just slightly over challenged. And I think that's just what you were describing.
Any more questions from the audience? Good enough? No.
Yeah, thank you for the very nice talk. It was very interesting. And I want to understand a little bit more from you. How do you differentiate a challenge and a fear? Like, a challenge can be something good. It's quite interesting to go ahead. But is it about the consequence that makes a challenge a fear, or what are your thoughts on this regard?
Well, first of all, I had to call my model fun, fear, and focus. So fun, challenge, and focus wouldn't have been as much fun to use, and not so. To a certain degree, the 3 Fs was my way of putting it into people's brains. But to answer your question, a little bit of fear is good. So for example, the biggest trigger to flow is fear of social consequences. So the fear, for example, of social embarrassment in front of a group of people so that you are not able to perform, or you're supposed to deliver a speech and you're worried if it will be well received. That triggers flow because something needs to be at stake. If we feel that nothing important is going on and that nothing can go wrong, your brain won't make the effort of going into peak performance. You can't artificially stress yourself when you know it's just easy. And when it's just easy, actually a different brain area is engaged, and maybe I can show it. So if this is, let's say, your head seen from the side, and we have the prefrontal cortex here for rational thinking. We have the limbic system here for emotions. That's very simple brain model, of course. Here we have the basal ganglia, and the basal ganglia is where your experience is stored. When everything is going according to routines, or when everything is predictable, or when you've done something a million times, you just do it according to your basal ganglia. It goes on autopilot, like driving your car. The first time you do it, you need to engage your prefrontal cortex, and it's scary and it's difficult and you need to pay attention. After a couple of miles, you can listen to the radio, eat a sandwich, talk on the phone. At least most people think they can do all those things at once. And it's your basal ganglia driving you. So we do need a little bit of a challenge to kick out of that, like that autopilot kind of brain. And your brain can tell when something is too easy for you. And then the way to really get into flow is to increase your skill level and to increase the challenge. And the challenge always needs to be a little bit too big for you.
I saw the next question here. I keep the mic.
Thank you so much. My question is, like, in your own life, in your personal life, how have you, let's say, approached the fun and the fear? Like, any actual examples of how you have used it, I don't know, in your writing, in your studies, in development of a project?
Yes, I totally have. And I have an anecdote that actually relates to Wacom in a sense, because I met Alex, who's organizing the event, back when I was doing a TED Talk here in Düsseldorf, and Wacom was one of the sponsors and organizers. And I brought my drawing pad, and I had the tech team know what I wanted to do, but it was such an unusual setup because most people use PowerPoint. So for whatever reason, there was somebody in the tech team who, did something to my iPad. So when I came on stage and I started presenting and I started drawing, nothing works. Everything was blank, like nothing was working. And of course, for a moment, I was really stressed out because I had rehearsed this, 1,000 people were watching, and I couldn't show my presentation. But then I just snapped out of it, and I had the best presentation ever compared to the rehearsals. It was better without my presentation. And that wasn't because the presentation was so terrible. It was because it forced me to improvise. It increased the challenge. This has been overly rehearsed. With TED Talks, you really script this and things. You really rehearse it to be at this exact 18 minutes. So when I lost my presentation, I felt I really got into flow. And so to a certain degree, this was afterwards, some TED organizer from a different city came and said, "Did you just fake this to show your point?" I said, "No, it wasn't. But I am a little bit of a sensation seeker. So I need a little bit of when I studied, I moved to 5 different countries. Nobody did this back then. I just did it because I was curious, or I'm driven a little bit by curiosity. I love exploring new things. Give me some spicy food, I try it. Okay. So in a sense, that was good to me. So I always try in my life to balance, to really, I always follow just my fun. I must say I've never, ever, ever done anything I don't like. I choose jobs. Of course, in my life, I've done a lot of things I don't like. Don't get me wrong. But when I thought of my career, I've always followed the fun. What would I truly enjoy? What is my passion? What am I really good at? What interests me? I've never been thinking will I be able to support myself with this, or, will I be good at it? It was always fun driven. And then It's always about increasing the challenge and making it more interesting. And then there's a certain focus when you do something you love. So I would say that my life is hugely characterized by fun, free, and focus. And I use it every day for myself. Like when I need to, when I wrote my book, I sat down, I put those headphones on, and I just got into deep work, and I just had found a topic you love. It was a bit difficult because, it's, well, at least to me, it's how do I structure these chapters? Which stories do I want to bring in? So I was challenged. And then I had this hyper focus where I couldn't hear anyone. I was just in my own little world. So I use it all the time. That was a very long answer, but all the things I do, I always try on myself first. And then my husband is my guinea pig and my kids. And then I try it on my clients later. Sometimes the inverse.
Shall we choose a question from the chat? Yeah.
Yeah, to encourage more questions in the chat. So I think it's about a topic which is often asked also in working environments. It's about multitasking, change of activities. I mean, I was listening into the novelty what you brought up, but I think the question is to be interpreted more short term. So I read it out for you, and maybe you can answer. So, does the change of activities help to be more productive, or is it bad for the focus? And I guess the audience was more on multitasking very frequently than novelty, what you explained early on.
Yeah. So to speak about multitasking first, maybe. Research shows that when you get interrupted, it takes you 20 minutes to go back into flow. That's an insane loss of, productivity. So every time we switch, we lose something. We lose time, we lose focus, we lose productivity. So it's much better to do serial single tasking than to try to do everything at once. Even more so, I think I can show you a little graph on that. Let's see if I have it here. Here it is. What you can see here is that when people do a lot of multimedia multitasking, so people who are heavily multitasking in their daily lives, actually the anterior cingulate cortex in your brain will shrink. It will go down. So if you think about this, what this means is that over time, the parts of your brain that you need to focus shrink. And interestingly enough, many people who are heavily multitasking perceive themselves as highly productive. So to a certain degree, you lose that ability to self-catch. You lose that understanding that you're actually not so productive. So multitasking is really not something that's good for the brain. But I think what is good for the brain is to try out new things, to explore, to stimulate yourself with novelty. When you start a meeting, for example, I just give you one quick hack. Most people, when you're in a seminar, they will maybe start a session by recapping what people had learned before. So they start with something old. That's not a good idea. Think of a 2-day seminar, and then on the morning of the next day, they will say, oh, yesterday we learned these 3 things. Yes, the repetition is good, but to a certain degree, maybe you want to start with a surprise exercise. Maybe you want to start with a personal anecdote. Maybe you want to do a crazy group activity with people to trigger their dopamine. Because if people start with something old, the dopamine system is not activated, and the learning that follows, even for new things, isn't as deep. So it's a good idea to stimulate novelty and surprise, and to use that in presentations, and to use that when you want people to learn, when you want people to listen, when you communicate. So to summarize your question or my answer to it, multitasking is pretty bad for both brain and performance, but stimulating yourself and others with novelty strategically is good.
Okay, thank you. Surprise, the last question, because we have to stick on the time. I think we have time for one more question. Sorry, Oliver. take
Okay. I would like to ask how to recover parts. So meditation obviously is something that you can do. You said walking is something you can do, because I'm interested on how to improve if people have been multitasking, how to improve if they have been stressed over a longer period of time. Thank you.
Ah, that's such a great question. So I would say there are different types of recovery. And actually, I would start by showing you something, I think something very fundamental that people often forget. So today I talked about the flow state, right? But the flow state is very energy intensive also. It pushes you to use up a lot of chemicals, the dopamine, the noradrenaline, the acetylcholine. So what you need to do is to get what I call strategic rest in order to be able to get into flow again. And many people kind of skip that step. They get into flow, they live a hectic life, they're always productive, but they never take a break. And so, to your question, how you can get a better brain, meditation is great for your brain. Doesn't work for everyone, so just see if you like it, if you enjoy it, if it benefits you. Some recent research showed that for 12% of people, for example, mindfulness-based stress reduction was not effective. So I always have that approach that you will feel what works for you. So rather than thinking meditation is good for everyone, maybe it's good for 90% of people, but there are 10% who don't enjoy it. So don't force yourself if you're one of those. Exercise is really good for your brain. Sleep. I mean, the best thing for your brain is to get, I'm obsessed with sleep. My family knows that. Like when people ask me, what's your favorite activity? I always say sleep. Like I love my sleep. I'm crazily protecting my sleep. I'm very boring. Don't meet me in the evening. Like I never go to these networking dinners. I rather sleep. So sleep is great. Personal, my favorite. And then there's also active recovery. So it's good to also go out in nature, take a little walk. So because when you recover by just doing nothing, sometimes that can also be very exhausting. And I do believe that when stress is the factor, you want to improve your autonomy. You want to get in charge again. You want to make sure that you shape your destiny. So get out of the victim mindset and always ask yourself, what is one thing I can do to improve the current situation? Because your brain loves autonomy.
Famous last words. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Friederike. I think we could go on for hours with the questions because it's so exciting topic. But yeah, we have to move on. The next session is waiting. So from our side, again, thank you very much for joining Connected Inc. And I think it's very worth reading your books, of course. So getting much more deeper into the topic. And so thank you, Friederike. And yeah, maybe you join us online this evening.
Yes.
Or you go to sleep. I would prefer that.
You got me there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be with you all.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. And yeah. Hello and welcome back in the Wacom Experience Center in Düsseldorf. Nice that you stayed here the last minutes, the last session. I'm very happy to introduce you to the next session tonight. And we have a special guest on site here in Düsseldorf, and this is Rafik El Hariri. He is from the Lebanon here. He arrived yesterday. He made already a trip to Cologne. You don't want to hear this in Düsseldorf because, it's another topic. You won't understand this in the internet, but it's a Düsseldorf-Cologne thing, so. Rafik is an illustrator, animator, and a mental health advocate. And he's an appreciator of the little things in life. He was one of the 30 under 30 from the Forbes list, so also a very exciting person. And he will tell us a little bit about his personal stories and his ups and downs, and how he copes with mental health issues through his art and through his work. And so the session is called Imagine a World Where Illustration Can Foster Mental Health. And we will have also a Q&A after this session. And after this online session, we will have an exclusive book reading here in Düsseldorf. Unfortunately, it's not going to be streamed, so the next time you have to go to Düsseldorf, to come to Düsseldorf to join this. But let me introduce you, Rafik El Hariri. A heart warm welcome. Hi, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Thank you that you're here. So I'll pass on the stage to you and have fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. So, as the title says, imagine a world where illustration can foster mental health. This took me a while, actually, to get to that point, and I had a lot of ups and downs, and how did I get here? Hopefully, you'll enjoy the story. It's very variating. So, who am I? I'm a Lebanese designer, illustrator. I'm someone from a very small country called Lebanon, and even a smaller city called Tripoli. It's a beautiful city, filled with controversy, filled with the ups and downs, the good and bad, the black and white. It's beautiful because of its duality. And this is something that is crucial to my story, which we'll get to later on. So how did I start? Along the way, starting the age of 9 onto my teenage years, I was definitely a hobbyist of drawing, trying to draw different things, try to see what does work for me, which technique, which style, what do I like to draw, what do I don't. But this took a short break around the senior years in high school because I was falling back on grades. I did not have enough time to actually study. I feared that I might fail and have to repeat senior year again. And I definitely wanted to graduate because I absolutely hated school. So this is when the break came along, and around that time, when I did have free time on my own, I wasn't really drawing. I wasn't doing anything that is quote-unquote creative. So in my spare time, I used to go to the internet cafe, and I had a lot of time on my hands because literally I would open MSN Messenger and I had no one to talk to. So during that time, I would research stuff about the occult, about esotericism, mysticism, spirituality, everything in regards to witchcraft, theology. For me, this was interesting in hindsight because it was filled with visuals, filled with symbolism, stuff that really made me feel that this is something I would be interested in researching about its history, the way it came about. It wasn't just boring history and boring years, just trying to memorize everything. And high school passed by, and thankfully I passed, and I was able to get into university. Back then, I wanted to major in clinical psychology, and it was something that I was always intrigued at, because it's really interesting to study something that is completely abstract. It's not about the human mind, rather than how the human mind actually works. But around that time, I told my mom, so listen, this is what I want to do. I want to get into clinical psychology. She was like, I respect that decision, but how about we go into something creative first? Try to nurture that skill that you have. If you feel that this isn't something that really works for you, you can switch back to your original choice, or you can actually double major. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So around that time, I majored in graphic design, and I had zero clue about the creative industry. I had no idea what graphic design was. In my mind, graphic designers draw. That's it. It goes as far as that. So around for the first year, I was having a foundational year, painting, drawing, all of that. But I was still scared and nervous about holding a pen again or trying to create something from scratch. So digital and paper collage were at hand. For me, alternating two different realities and combining them into one was my escape route of not drawing, but doing something creative at the same time. And then around the second year in university, I started going more into the digital things, learning about design, learning about art, illustration, communication design. And thankfully, around that time, my birthday was in March, and my sister brought me this thing that I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what a drawing tablet was. I had no idea what Wacom was. So I asked her, what was it? She told me, I don't know, but the guy at the store told me that this is something for people who draw, so I just got it for you. I'm like, okay, this seems interesting, even though I have zero clue about it. So I kept experimenting for a few days, and it was really hard at first because I'm not literally drawing on the surface. I'm staring at the screen while I'm drawing. So for me, this was completely surreal. And technically speaking, it definitely took some time to calibrate my lines, try to see if I want to draw here, it goes there. So I had to do this balance. And thankfully then, when I started doing digital work, I was shameless about posting on social media. I used to post all the doodles, all the sketches, even though it didn't look good to me, but I just had this idea, let me just share it. So around that time, I got a gig to do an animated lyric video. And as you can see, at that time, I didn't really have a visual identity or a style. It was just something that I was experimenting with. And I think as of today, this video has reached over 24 million views. So for me, doing this first gig as a freelancer, I'm like, okay, I think this is my thing. This is what I like to do. This is what I want to carry on with. So I kept experimenting even further. I took my craft very seriously. I thought that this isn't only a passion, this isn't only a study, this isn't only a career, but it's also a calling. For me, I knew that I had a calling, I just didn't know what it was back then. So I started drawing more and tried to see what does resonate with me, what are the things that I would like to talk about most. But intrinsically, I went into childhood. I went into things that maybe I didn't have enough time to think back around childhood, but when I grew up, I appreciated those little things that actually are the big things. So I combined spirituality, magic, childhood, the conscious, the subconscious, all into one. But it was very organic. I wasn't thinking, I was just drawing. And then later on, I started reminiscing even more, thinking about the things that mattered to me as a child, whether I was walking in a street that I love, or whether it's a color palette that I familiarize with a lot, or maybe just about the idea of affection and emotions and love, because this is something that I was very in tune with, but at the same time, I didn't know what love is in general, not a specific kind of love. And then I started seeing repetitions. I started seeing a pattern, things that I liked and things that I didn't like necessarily. And at that particular moment, I felt that I'm not finding the style, it's the other way around. The style is finding me. And then I felt that I need to push it even further. I wanted to do something that really represents who I am, not just the things that I like and I don't like. So that style even matured further, and I started talking about really harsh things, whether it's the first time you fall in love, or the first time you get a broken heart, or the first time you have a feeling that there are butterflies in your stomach, but it's actually a red flag or a warning sign rather than something that necessarily usually feels good. So I went deeper into that, and it wasn't something that I planned. It was more about something that I had the need to vocalize without actually saying a word. Because back then, and maybe just a little bit still now, I'm more on the introverted side of things. I would prefer for someone to look at something than me explaining that something. So I felt that this is my calling. This is what I want to do. This is the thing that really speaks volumes for me, and this is the quote-unquote mission in life that I have. So I started taking it even more seriously with time. And I went into my city, Tripoli. I went into my country, Lebanon. I went into the topics that matter to me, whether it was about socio-political issues, whether it was about feminism, or about the female presence in my family, because my family is female-led, and it's something that I'm very proud of, and I feel that this is something that really shaped who I am now as a person. And when that started happening, all the work came automatically through social media, through my usage of the product, and taking my craft very seriously. So I wanted to see what can I do to push it even further. Working with different clients, different organizations, different themes, it did not compromise my style rather than just push it even forward, because I can accommodate that particular style into so many different approaches, whether editorial illustration, for example, such as Vice, which is a very controversial media outlet, or whether it's about fashion, whether it's about beauty editorials, whether it's about organizations or humanitarian organizations, or just about humanitarian or like something that is humane to talk about, causes. And even though I reached a place where I feel that this is what I want to do and this is my freelance career, but I also wanted to push it forward. And I always had a dream to do something for kids. It doesn't have to be necessarily all my own, rather than just me contributing to it. And I'm not kidding when I tell you that it is very hard to illustrate for kids, because if I show any artwork for an adult, he would have a politically correct answer. But when you show it to a child, it's either ugly or it's either beautiful. There's no in between. So it was a nice journey when I actually went into the children's literature and I saw how publishing works and how children actually react to certain stories or certain visuals, and how text and images come hand in hand. And for me, that was like an aha moment that this is useful, this is working, this is something that I'm actually able to make a difference, even if it was a 1% difference. So I did many years of children's publishing, and I still did not have enough. I was positively greedy. I wanted to do even more. So I went into music packaging and music projects, whether it was about animations or looped animations or cover arts for albums or EPs or singles. So as you can see, I had the privilege and the honor to work with so many different DJs, so many different artists and musicians around the world, and in my country, Lebanon, as well. So still you can see that the style is being accommodated to different tonality of voices, different approaches, different clients. But then I had this struggle that I'm doing a lot of things for other people, but I'm not doing anything for me, because at the end of the day, this is something that I love. It's something that I want to do, not just because I get paid to do it. It's a passion, it's a hobby, it's a career altogether. So I went back into my childhood. I'm a 90s kid, so 90s is definitely an influence of mine. And going back into my own culture or own country, because it's a big part of who I am. And back then, I had this kind of refusal being in Lebanon, being in a country that really does not appreciate its people, or feeling like you're stuck in a country and you will never get out. So I tried to take the good out of it, not necessarily just focusing on the bad. So it was about nostalgia, it was about memories, reminiscence. So I always focus on that. And Tripoli, this is one part of Tripoli. It's a beautiful city, as I mentioned. And the reason why I focus on Tripoli a lot is because it's a marginalized city in a marginalized country. And we barely even talk about Tripoli or Lebanon to begin with. And wherever I go, wherever I do, I always emphasize the idea that I'm from Tripoli and I am Lebanese as well. I'm not just Lebanese, I'm Tripolitan as well. And I'm so proud to represent a very, very small city in a very small country, because there's immense amount of talent, be it creative or otherwise. And there are so many people who are doing great things, but sadly, they are not being focused or exposed enough. So all of this went by, and I decided, okay, I've done stuff for authors, but why can't I be the author? Why can't I be the person who's telling the story and not just visually narrating that story? So this is how Indigo came about. Indigo is a new age spiritual concept, and it talks about a new kind of kids that are gonna grow up, and they will be the peaceful social rebels in a way that they will be anti-war, anti-corruption, anti-violence, but in the most peaceful way possible, because they operate on empathy, they operate on energy, they operate on anything that means resonating with other human beings. And translating that big concept for kids was definitely hard, because in this case, I was talking about bullying. And I was definitely bullied back in high school or in school during my young years, whether I was a big boy, whether I had a jaw issue because my jaw was like all the way to the front, whether it was about my voice tone, the way I spoke, the way I walked. They literally targeted every single thing that you might think of. So I'm like, if this happened to me, it's definitely happening to other kids, and it will definitely happen even more for years to come. And Indigo is just the underdog that says you don't have to be Batman, you don't have to be Superman to have a superpower. Empathy and kindness is your secret power or hidden power or superpower. And when I did that book, I did not expect any kind of impact. I thought, okay, I'm doing this thing that I love, and it is what it is. But when it was actually published, and actually, like, a lot of people got a copy of the book, they said, this happened to me, or this is happening to my daughter or my child. And I was like, okay, this is working. This is amazing. This is exactly what I want to do. So it's reaching people. And then COVID happened. And COVID really disrupted every single thing that we might have thought of or planned ahead. And it's a blessing in disguise, because when COVID happened, I had the chance to sit with myself even more. At that particular point, I had so many mental health struggles, and I was going through a heartbreak, and I had so many things on my mind that I was trying to avoid. But then lockdown happened, and they're like, no, you're gonna sit here, you're gonna think about every single thing, you're gonna try to solve it. And around that time, I actually resorted to professional therapy. I was never against it, but I never had the urge to actually go and do it. So when I did go and I did have my first session, it was an epiphany, because there was so much that I did not know about myself, me thinking that I know who I am, I know what I feel, I know what I'm thinking, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. So I had a lot of time to think, and everything was disrupted. I had a lot of therapy sessions. It was amazing. It changed who I am as a person. And something that my therapist said is that you don't necessarily change, rather than you're just a book on a shelf, and that duster is the therapy. It came and dusted you off. You're still the same person, but you have more insight about yourself. So this is when I decided, okay, I think I need to face my problems, I need to face my struggles, and I need to really dig deep what's going on inside my mind and what's going on inside my heart. And one of the very big pointers that were happening back then is me falling out of love and going through a heartbreak, along so many other things. So this is how the second book of mine came about. It's called I Found a Heart. It's targeted for people our ages, the adults who went through so many different swings or emotional roller coasters during high school, onto teenage years, and onto adulthood. And I combined everything into this one book, where it talks about you are able to repair who you are as a person, and you are able to heal. Because even though you might have went through so many bad things, but at the same time, there's always the light at the end of the tunnel. And when I did that book, it even made a stronger impact, because I wasn't targeting kids. I was targeting people my age. I was targeting experiences that were not relevant to a gender. It was not relevant to a geography. It was not relevant to a specific group of people. It was literally for any single person who might feel. So us as human beings, we're creatures of emotion. And that book really led into so many beautiful things, and gave me an even stronger mission to talk about what I love and talk about what matters most. And I think, as you already know, in the Middle East, the topic of mental health is still taboo, and it's still being frowned upon, especially that I'm an Arab male person who's talking about the fact that it's okay not to be okay. So I was somehow disrupting the flow, but at the same time, I knew that I had social, moral, emotional responsibility to actually do that for other people. Because if I have the privilege and the platform to do that, maybe someone else doesn't. So even if I can make a small difference, I would love that. And this book, like, I just unveiled everything. I spoke about all of it shamelessly, whether it was my experience or a collective experience of other people. And then I decided, okay, I'm doing what I love. I did this book. I'm speaking to a large audience. I have a responsibility to do even more with it. But I also took a step back. I had burnout. I had a mental health struggle. I needed to go back into things that really mattered to me. It wasn't just about telling other people what's good and what's not. It's just about me knowing myself more. So I went through this small series of comic strips. It was a very pragmatic approach to me trying to incorporate my style and my technique into a different format or different layout. And that made me reach even further into me, because I always revisit the child. And for me, whenever I do a work, it's for the child and the inner child as well. Because for me, if I guard and if we all guard that inner child, we will succeed in life no matter what. And that actually led a lot of positive feedback. People were actually amazed by the relatability. And I was amazed as well by the relatability, because I did not expect people would understand. And that's how my third book came about. It was published this past October. It's called 3 a.m. And 3 a.m. talks about the idea that you are in the deepest hour of the night. You are in your bed. This is the most private place you are in. And it's about the individual eclectic experience. Before falling asleep, what do you think about? What are the stuff that really creeps inside your mind, whether it was an ambition or a dream or a wish or a fear? All of it, they happen right before we fall asleep, and they actually shape what happens onto the next day. And it was just about, I dug into the realistic approach of mental health and in the realistic world and in the present world. But what about the world of dreams? What about what's happening when we levitate from our body and we're ethereal? We're just flying in the cosmos and inside our mind and inside our subconscious, where it's prevalent. It's the person who's taking charge and taking the lead. And yeah, for me, I felt that this is just the perfect recipe and balance between realistically speaking about mental health and when I'm talking about dreams or about ambitions or wishes. And of course, it's about the matters of the heart. It's not just the mind, it's also the heart as well. They operate together. And for me, talking about sleep, because me as well, I love sleeping, one of my favorite activities, and I'm sure a lot can agree to that as well. And yeah, 3 a.m., this is how 3 a.m. came about. And I definitely want to do more of this. I want to do more explorations, an idea that I want to talk about this. I want to talk about what matters. I want to talk about mental health. I want to talk about disrupting the flow or breaking the pattern or breaking any vicious cycles, learning certain behaviors and reparenting and relearning our own behaviors in a very different, healthy way. And my biggest wish of all, and the takeaway of this, is that it's really okay not to be okay. And if you have a talent, if you have a skill, be it creative or otherwise, if you have a voice, use that voice to be able to impact yourself intrinsically and also impact other people. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I welcome any questions.
Yeah, that's what I want to tell you, the audience, yes. You're very welcome to ask questions from the audience or online on YouTube. Anyone? Yes. So I can, just a second, I will run to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and as well, I could understand something in the book. I have the feeling you focused on the heart in the illustration. So, do you think the brain as well has a role in your mind? Because I totally understand. Okay, heart is very important for the mental health, etc. But I think usually we see heart and brain and like the combination between. So. Yes. What do you think about this? Is this in your illustration, it's more like about the heart. So
honestly, I think rarely when I illustrate an actual heart, I'm not even talking about the heart. It's more about the essence. Like for example, in the second book, when I said I found a heart, it wasn't really about finding a heart of someone else and it's now like a partnership with me, or is it my own heart that I'm rediscovering again? It's more about finding an essence that you lost along the way, and it could be any kind of essence that really represents who you are as a human being. And rediscovering and finding that essence back, I depicted it in a heart because for me, the thing that really makes you essential on a surface level is the heart, because it's the thing that operates us entirely. But as a correlation between the heart and the brain, as I mentioned, it really matters to have both, because for me, I cannot be someone who's too emotional and I cannot be someone who's also too logical. But when these two work hand in hand to try to solve a problem, be it your own problem or someone else's, I think this is the perfect combination. And I do tackle the mind and the heart equally. But I do as well take it in a more surrealistic approach. I take it in a metaphor rather than a literal concept. I hope that answers your question.
More questions from the audience? You can choose.
Okay. I would like to know, when you were feeling down, how did you find the power to create?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not gonna romanticize the idea that artists are creative when they're sad. I mean, even though that does have reality to it, but at the same time, it's not the entirety of it. But for me, when I felt down, I felt that everything was kind of shutting down, everything was dark. I always had this like little calling or little voice that's saying, you can do something with that. You can take it all out. Instead of keeping it in, why not take it out? And I wasn't able to do that fully before therapy, but after going to professional therapy and knowing more about myself and having insight about that, it became more like an extension. It didn't feel like this is something that I'm forcing it to be out, rather than, okay, I know what it's like, I know how it feels, let me translate it into something. And you really can make beauty out of chaos, and you can make beauty out of something that is dark or sad or whatsoever. But along the way, there has been some instances where I felt like I'm blocked. I cannot do anything with it. So for me, I just take a step back. I try to work with that block. I make it my friend rather than my enemy, and try to see, okay, let me dig even deeper. So I do journaling, I do shadow work, I write, I use other media or utensils to let me deliver that idea and then translate it onto the visual. It's more like a labyrinth rather than a maze, because you reach to a certain epiphany or conclusion rather than just an entrance-exit. So yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think, do we have any questions online? Not yet. Okay, then we have enough here in the audience.
Actually, it's really, really beautiful, like what you do, and I think that what struck me was like how thoughtful is your process. So if you could go deeper, because like it was like already answering that you go into like writing your ideas, like how does it like develop like your, let's say, putting down your feelings and then being able to explore them like visually? Do you mix like exploring just like doodles and writing? Like how does your thought process go into like putting the feeling? Because it's like very difficult to put a feeling, and also make others feel that.
Yeah. So if you take a look at my journal, it's an absolute mess. There is absolutely no logic in whatever I'm writing down. I could write horizontally, I can write upside down, but the idea, they do come through different approaches. Like one of them is actually just writing stuff down and looking back at it 3-4 days later, because when you're actually writing down, it's your subconscious that is operating. But when you take a step back later on and you see what you've written, you notice that, like reading between the lines, you notice that are the things that are really important, or the things that is being repeated. In other instances, and this is something that's actually fun, and I've been doing it recently, I have this surreal dream that absolutely makes no sense, but the moment I wake up, I take my phone, I open the Notes app, and I just write down immediately everything before I forget, and then I go back to sleep. So the next day, like I hold my phone, like what the hell did I write? I have no idea what this is, but I noticed like the keywords that would be an inspiration for me to do a story or to tell a story. Sometimes it's literally a color, it's literally a scent, it's just taking a walk. Like you can find inspiration everywhere, but for me, as you mentioned, I focus on the little things. The stuff that we take for granted, whether it was just a small walk alone, or like the first time you have this feeling, this new feeling, be it good or bad. Those little things that time passes and they become the big things, this is what I operate on most and try to branch out of. So, yeah.
I think we have a question online.
Yes, Rafik, we have a couple of questions online.
Awesome.
So there is a curious person and wants to know, what is your next project?
Oh, okay. So I just recently finished and launched my 3rd book, and I will be taking some time to illustrate the 4th book. And this time I'm going back to children. Like first time was for children, 2nd and 3rd were for adults, but now I feel like I need to go back to children a bit. I'm not really going to reveal the entirety of it, but it's gonna be tackling a very important topic that is happening worldwide, and sadly it is being hush-hushed about when it comes to kids from all ages. So I definitely wanna open this door on this topic and just show everyone that if you might have went through an awful experience, it does not shape you who you are as a person, rather than you can learn something from it and try to heal from it as well. Of course, targeted and tailored and curated for kids. So this will be, in hindsight and in general, my idea for the next book.
Thank you for disclosing.
Thank you.
I think I have another one, which is a little bit more, not a tougher question, but taboo topic again. Very, very personal question. Was it hard for you as a man to talk about these topics with mental health? I mean, you were touching on your, where you're coming from and how is it tolerated and so on, but what the question is about you as man.
Honestly, I think I might have an unusual answer to that. Despite the fact that I mentioned that I'm a male Arab who is talking about mental health, Having people try to shut this down or try to criticize that around me did not necessarily affect me, because I grew in a household where I was always taught that it's okay if something happens, you can tell me about it. If something were wrong, you can say that you're not feeling okay. And that's definitely thanks to mom, because she's the person, like she's my rock, she's my biggest supporter, and she's the person who pushes me always to the front. And having that approach and me being raised, I grew up and I felt that if I spoke about this thing, I don't feel ashamed. I don't feel like I'm nervous. Of course, there is like stage fright in case of like a presentation or something, but in general, talking about it was very normal. It felt very organic. And at the same time, it also gave me this intrinsic moral responsibility that if I'm able to do that with full comfort, I'm definitely sure that there are other people who are not able to do the same, even though that they do want to do the same. So that gave me even a stronger purpose to keep talking about it even further. But to answer that question, no, I don't. So far, I don't find it hard. So far. Thank you.
Very good. There are a lot coming in, but I think we want to go in the audience here in the room.
Yeah, maybe when the audience has a question, I pass this on. We have a little bit more time in this session, so no problem.
Hello, Rafi. Hi, nice to see you in Germany. I just have a question in general. So in the Middle East, we're not really, we don't have like sort of tech-savvy generation. So I wanted to ask, the moment you had your Wacom tablet, how did it push your skills as an artist? What was so special about it? Did you feel uncomfortable? Do you miss paper? And regarding the big and Arab and emotional blah, 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 well, I also come from the same region, but I use fashion, so that is normal just to talk about it. Yeah. And I would really like to know, because of digital transformation now, sometimes jumping between two mediums can be disturbing for one person. And sometimes you struggle between the element itself, between digital and physical. Thank you.
Thank you. So to answer the first part of your question, I blanked out completely. Can you just remind me about the yeah, sorry.
Exactly,
about
yes. Yeah. Your
okay.
Wacom experience.
Yeah.
How did the digital ink really push you as an artist?
Okay, so I'll be completely honest and straightforward with that. The moment I got the Wacom tablet, for the first maybe couple of months, I felt, is this really my thing? I don't feel it. I don't see paper. I don't see strokes. I just see like a screen. And it felt really foreign to me, but considering that it is a new medium, it definitely felt normal as well. But I can definitely assure you that even though there will never be like an ideal replacement for like the feeling of a pencil on a paper, because it's so human, but at the same time, me being a digital artist, it gave me way more versatility and way more flexibility in doing something. Because if I were to do an illustration of one of the things that you've seen on the screen, if I were to do it in paper, it would feel redundant to me. I would be completely frustrated, and I would not have the control that I am curating and tailoring according to my style. While, for example, when you're talking about digital softwares and working with a hardware like Wacom, for example, it feels like this is the magic wand and you're the magician, and this is exactly the ritual of it. You know what are the ingredients, you know how to put everything in one big cauldron, and you birth out a very beautiful result. And it goes without saying that it gave me a career. Like having a Wacom tablet, it was literally the very first step for me to have a career. Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't literally be standing here today. And in regards to the second part, for the idea of translating messages or trying to tell a story in a digital transformation or a digital age, I would definitely agree that even though everything is happening so fast and it's a fast-paced technological era that we're living in, but at the same time, and I have mentioned this many times before, people are more prone and more attracted to tell stories. And having digital outlets, whether it was a social media, whether it was a news outlet, whether it was a digital tool such as like the metaverse or anything that would feel foreign for now, but it will make much more sense later on, it will actually bring us back into the idea of telling stories. And if I told my story, someone else has another story, and every single person of us has an interesting story or a bunch of stories. So having that tool for me is not a bad thing, and it will never be a bad thing. But of course, you can see the duality in everything, the good and bad. I see the good in it, and I focus on the good, because you literally can spread the message from the comfort of your home. So for me, I go all the way digital, but keeping in check the idea of reminiscing, having that old feel to certain senses, the touch, the scent, the feel. So I try to find this balance between both. I hope that answers the question.
Any more questions here in the audience? Online questions? Mark? Millions.
Plenty. Now they don't stop, Rafik.
Okay.
You have to stay 1 hour longer.
You have 10 minutes.
My pleasure.
I think it's about, again, about your country and your
Yes.
background. It's about how do you find all these opportunities? You have done so much things. You have such a big audience. And how do you manage to do things like that in such a poor country?
Yeah, so the answer is very simple. It's social media. I did not expect back then that I would have a platform where I'm able to reach out to people and vice versa. Because at first, like, I only started doing Instagram in 2016, which is fairly recent. I had this idea that, no, I'm an artist, I'm not gonna be on social media, I'm a rebel, I'm an anarchist, whatever you wanna call it. But then when I decided that what I'm doing is not necessarily mine. Okay, this is the thing that I've created and I've drawn, but at the same time, I shouldn't be selfish about sharing. So I started sharing. And at first, I had no pressure on the idea of what to share and how to share it and when to share it. Now it's definitely becoming more strategized and systematic. But at the same time, it's so easy when you are able to DM someone and tell them my mission resonates with yours and my brand resonates with yours, and we're able to do something together. It's literally that simple. And sometimes you do it, sometimes other people approach you. So it's a combination between me doing an effort and sometimes receiving a blessing by having a new project or a new client or whatsoever. So the answer is social media. As much as you can, be on social media, be present, and that's all you need. Because thankfully, one of the very few privileges that we still have in Lebanon is internet access. Hopefully, we still keep it. But yeah, we operate with so many limited resources. But us, as Lebanese people, we have a drive, we have hunger to do more with all this limited resources. So yeah. Yep.
Thank you very much. So there are a lot of people very proud of you, and they're just stating it in the chat. So there's one more. It's more about the dark sides or the downsides. Yeah. Again, it's about therapy. Is there anything in particular what you found very inspiring and what helps you to do all the creations, or can you point out there something in specific? So let me read out the question, because it's maybe, what were the concept and things you found in therapy that most inspired you to create illustrations?
It's the idea that you don't really know who you are, or you think you know who you are, but when you actually sit down and just talk about whatever is going on with you and have the therapist only being a reflection or being just a mirror to you, you would be surprised with the things that come out. Like, for example, the first time I went to do a session, I thought I'm not gonna say a single word and I'm gonna be very awkward. I'm just gonna sit and stare at the therapist. But everything came about, my words starting popping out, I unraveled, and in a way that, okay, this is good, this is interesting. I'm talking, it's getting even better and better with each session. And having that insight about myself gave me also creative insight, because not only I was working on my mental well-being, but I was also fueling my creativity as well. Because the thing that I used to look at in a certain point of view, now I can see it in a multifacets. So it's just about having a new approach to things will lead to a birth of new concepts and new ideas, using the same creativity and same process. So yeah, thank you.
So we have 5 minutes left. So when there's some questions from the audience, or we have, okay.
Amazing. Thank you. First of all, actually, I'm super impressed. I'm really happy that you invited here and that you're talking, because everything you mentioned, your answers, they feel really deep, honest, and I'm deeply moved. And my question that is, how did you find out that it's your calling? I guess it vibrated in your heart, but I just want to know.
I think in my opinion, in my case, I felt that it was my calling because I found this way where I'm able to tell an entire story without actually saying anything. And again, me being a very introverted person and not really always open to have a long communication with a group of people or like a one-on-one thing, I feel that if I go inwards instead of outwards, I will find even more within. And I think if I'm feeling that, then definitely at least one other person is feeling that as well. And I think, you know, when you just sit down and you might be on the porch having coffee or something, or just like taking a long walk, and you get this instant candid smile that, oh, this is nice, this is what I'm doing, okay, this feels nice. I think at that particular moment is when you feel you have a calling. It came in a very simple approach by me just smiling alone during a walk, and people saying, well, like, why is he smiling? But yeah, it came like that to me, and I felt that this is a big blessing. I have a privilege to be able to operate on. I have a gift that was from God, and I was given that gift to do something with it. And yeah, this is how I found my calling. Thank you. Thank you.
So Mark, do you have one last question from the online audience?
Now we have a good closing one, right? So
Awesome.
yeah. Let me look. Yeah, your illustrations. One of the people in the chat saying your illustrations are so alive and full of emotions. Do you feel having them one day as a storytelling cartoon?
Definitely, because even though I'm not fully experienced with the idea of animating stuff, like I've only been in animation for a couple of years and I'm still learning and I have a lot to learn. But I definitely do envision that there will be like maybe a small series online or something that would be envisioned in a small 15 seconds clip, and each one would like represent a certain idea. But yeah, I definitely want to see, like I want to be able to move those things literally, to be able to animate them rather than just looking at something still or trying to have this combination. So yeah, it's a plan in the future, near future, hopefully. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafik. Yeah, you will stay here on stage for the next. No, just sit down. Sorry. But yeah, this was the last online streamed session for today, for Humanity Day. This was the first Connected Ink Day. Whoop whoop. So. We're really happy with you, Rafik, here in Düsseldorf, and Friederike in Heidelberg. This was really a great introduction into the creative chaos world of Connected Ink. So, thank you for joining us online. I have no clue. I think I have to look there or there. I have no idea. And yeah, we will continue tomorrow with the Technology Day. I think we will start online at 12 o'clock. Is it correct? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you will see in our Connected Ink YouTube channel, you will see when we go next live tomorrow. We will have, of course, a lot of sessions here on site, but we start online around noon tomorrow. And now we will close the stream, but here in Düsseldorf we will continue with an exclusive book reading from Rafik, just for the audience here in Düsseldorf. So thank you all for joining us online, on site, wherever you are. And maybe we will see each other tomorrow. Mark?
Yeah, I just want to give you the hint that the people not showing up at 12 already.
It's CET. 3 o'clock. Oh, sorry. You can see in the internet, there's the information. Yeah, sorry. I'm very good prepared, you see. Not. No, thank you very much for joining, and we see tomorrow again, and we will stay here in Düsseldorf, and have a good night, have an inspiring night, have good dreams, nice dreams, take a lot of sleep, one of our favorite things of today, and see you. Bye.